let's talk for a minute about the vaccines. In order to have an emergency use authorization, which, to be clear, all of the available vaccines for COVID are still only available under an EUA, an emergency use authorization. In order to have that granted to you, you need three things. First of all, you need to be having an emergency. Second of all, you have to believe the manufacturers of these drugs, or in this case, vaccines, need to submit that they have every reason to believe that it is effective. And thirdly, you have to have, quote, no other available treatments. Those are the three requirements if you read about an emergency use authorization. And I would submit to you, number one, we don't have an emergency at this point in August of 2020. Number two, they know darn well and freely acknowledge, all the vaccine manufacturers and the FDA and the CDC acknowledge that the vaccines do not stop people from contracting or transmitting COVID. And then perhaps most importantly, the point you just made, we have a host of medications, successful, inexpensive, readily available medications to treat COVID. How in the world are they maintaining emergency use authorization?
Well, I've looked at the regulations carefully. It turns out that the vaccines would have an indication to prevent COVID. Treatments, the very first EUA treatment was hydroxychloroquine, followed by remdesivir inpatient treatment, and then bamlanivimab. Remember, those three actually had EUAs placed on them before the vaccines. So they were all treatments. The vaccines came in with an indication to prevent COVID. Now, the vaccines have only had one indication, and that is to prevent the binary occurrence of COVID. The FDA has never granted them the claim that they reduce hospitalization and death or they make the illness milder. So we've had three false claims in the vaccine agenda so far: that they stop the infection. They clearly don't. In the spring, the CDC had thousands of patients coming in hospitalized with COVID-19. The CDC May 1st said, we're going to stop tracking these breakthroughs. It was like a dam had broken open. Right. The second false claim is that the vaccines reduce transmission. Well, once the papers poured in and vaccinated people were spreading to each other and the viral load was equal in the nose of the vaccinated, unvaccinated, that claim went down. And then the third false claim is that they reduce the risk of hospitalization and death. Never had a randomized placebo-controlled trial with that as the primary endpoint, despite plenty of opportunity and funding to do so, to ever prove that point. FDA never granted that point. And in my view, we've had really a cadre of biased and flawed papers trying to make that claim. And now even Deborah Birx, who was on the former White House task force, came out and said, listen, the majority of people sick with COVID are fully vaccinated.
So where do they go from here? But they're still being used under the emergency use authorization. Where's the challenge to that?
Well, as Dr. Drew started out, they're actually still under basically a moniker that they're safe and effective. Well, let's take safety. There's never been a safety review. We should have had a monthly safety review, a day safety monitoring board, clinical event committee. I mean, this should have been taken seriously. We're going to ask every American to take one of these every 6 months. We should have had safety reviews, safety analyses. We're a year and a half into this. There's been no formal safety analysis. And then in terms of efficacy, when the vaccines came out, they were tested against the alpha and the wild type variant. The virus has mutated. Since they've been released, there's 25,000 papers on vaccines. There still hasn't been, Dr. Drew was saying about grand rounds, consensus conferences, other things to assimilate the massive data. Nothing.
No, and Dr. Drew and I talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm traveling in November, and we were looking at some of the other countries' requirements for booster shots. And even though I've had COVID twice, I may have to get a booster. And I had a horrible reaction to the vaccine. I have a son that had a terrible reaction to it, and I'm really very, very concerned. And of course, if I'm going to do it at all, I'm at least going to wait till the Omicron variant is sort of covered by the vaccine. It makes utterly no sense to do it before that. And, or maybe I'll just take Novavax and be done with it, or maybe Covaxin will be around by then and it'll be just a more standard sort of platform. But we'll do absolutely nothing. Maybe boost my T cells a little bit, maybe, but against an illness that I've already had and I'm not concerned about. It's wild.
And also, too, the fact that you've had an adverse reaction. Remember a principle in medicine: if someone's had a penicillin allergy or if someone's had a contrast dye allergy or previously had problems with vaccines, the last thing we do is give more of the same vaccine. We never do this. And you know, people in the military and large employers, they're being told to take the vaccines with no exceptions. Even if they have an anticipated fatal reaction, they're being told, listen, die with this or lose your job or get kicked out of the military. I've never seen this. Listen to this. Here's an analogy. We are so concerned about allergies, we've removed peanuts from the planes. Because one kid could have a peanut allergy, we're not going to have any peanuts on the planes. That's how concerned we are with allergies. But if someone has a significant allergy or reaction to a vaccine, nobody cares. Everybody has to take the vaccine. That'd be analogous to making every kid swallow a lump of peanut butter and see how many people die. The human mind is not thinking correctly. I can tell you right now.
The CDC states that COVID-19 vaccines are safe, effective, and reduce the risks of COVID-19. Always consult with your personal physician before making any decision about your health.